Good is often the enemy of great in business, and the vast majority of companies never become great because they're always satisfied with being good companies out there. Hello friends, my name is Luphumlo Joka and I'm an entrepreneur, leadership consultant, and I do a lot of work in the business development and leadership development space. Today I want to talk to you about one of my all-time favorite books. This book was actually published around 2001. I'm sure you've heard of it. If you haven't read it, please go out and read this book. If you want to, or if you're on the journey of building a great legacy business, a business that you can pass on to your children, or a business that you would one day want to sell, it has a lot of good stuff that you and I can learn from. So, Good to Great by Jim Collins. I read it, I think 3 or 4 years ago for the very, very first time. This year, I want to read it again. It's one of those books, you know, there are very few books that you can read 2 or 3 or 4 times. And this book is definitely one of them. It actually belongs to a friend of mine who since relocated from Port Elizabeth, and there are a couple of notes that I made on it when I was reading it for the very, very first time. But this is definitely a great read. So in this book, Jim Collins and his team, they seek to answer the question of how good companies shift and how good companies eventually become great companies. So here, on the one hand, you've got good companies. On the other, you've got great companies, exceptional companies. So what happens in between? How do you go from becoming a good company to becoming a great company? And this is the thing that this book seeks to answer. So there are a couple of things that he speaks about in the book, and in this video, I'm just going to recap some of my favorite learnings from the book, and I'll do maybe other videos delving into some of the things, because each thing that he discusses needs about a day to break down, I'd love to actually do a couple of workshops on this book. So basically the answer to how good companies become great companies is this, that great companies have disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. They've got disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined capital. And this is the good to great process. Disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined action. Disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. So obviously, in each segment, you've got certain things. He has certain things that he speaks about. And this is all based on quality scientific research of them actually going out and speaking to CEOs and speaking to senior executives and actually finding out of what it is that they do that enables them to get the returns and to get the profits and to get the level of, and to achieve the level of success that they achieve in these companies. So let's look at disciplined people. So there are 2 things that he speaks about under disciplined people. So Jim Collins argues that, concept 1 is you need level 5 leaders. You need disciplined people in your company. And to break that even further down, he says you need level 5 leaders. So he speaks about the 5 levels of leadership, how level 1 is you having highly capable individuals, having people that contribute, a contributing team member, competent manager, and effective leader, and eventually having a level 5 executive. And I don't know about you, but that's who I want to be. I want to be a level 5 executive. And it breaks down some of the traits and some of the skills and some of the characteristics of a level 5 executive. And you'd have to just go into it and read it yourself. But disciplined people is you need a level 5 type, the level 5 type of leadership in your company. And you'd need to know how to cultivate that and how to get your people to grow in terms of their leadership to becoming level 5 type of leaders. Then he says, concept number 2 under disciplined people is you need to ask the question, first who, then what? This is the very famous question. I think about everyone I speak to who has read this book, this is one of their key takeaways from the book is you ask, when you're building a company, wherever you're going, I think the analogy is that if you are on a bus and the bus is your company and you're trying to get to somewhere, you don't try and figure out where you're going first. You try and figure out who you need in your team. So first, who is important, the quality of people that you have in the team, the type of people that you have in the team. Then what? Then you decide, okay, this is what we're doing and this is where we're going, which is very unconventional. All of my life, I've done it the other way around. I first decide, okay, this is what I want to do. Then the question is, so who do I need to assist me to do what I want to do? So he says, the great companies always tried to get talent first, the right talent, and then ask the question, then what? And then he gives 3 practical disciplines for making people decisions, So he says, number 1, when in doubt, don't hire and keep looking. One of the mistakes I've always made. So when you're in doubt, when you're not sure, don't hire, don't make that hire. So keep looking. Then he says, when you know what you need to make a change, act. When you know what you need to make a change, act on it. So don't sit on information. Don't sit on a decision for months that you know as a leader in your company you need to make. He says, act on it. Then he says, put your best people on your biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems. Man, this is good stuff. Put your best people on your biggest opportunities and not your biggest problems. And how many of us as leaders and as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as employees, how many of us do the opposite? How many of us always put our best people on our biggest problems because we want them to solve the problems? So he says, put your best people on your biggest opportunities and not your biggest problems. So that's disciplined people. You need level 5 leaders, and you need to ask yourself first who, then what. Then he says you need disciplined thought. You need disciplined thought. So he speaks about 2 things under disciplined thought. He speaks about how you need to confront the brutal facts, how you need to confront the brutal facts. And he says there are 4 ways to create a climate where truth is heard. Confronting the brutal facts for me is about, being truthful about where you are in the company and what you need to do in order to get to where you need to be, okay? So he speaks about 4 ways to create a climate where truth is heard. So he says you lead with questions and not with answers. So a lot of leaders that I see and that I've worked with always fall into the temptation of providing answers. They want to always, be at the center of the solutions that are provided to the company. They just want to be the stars in the major role players. So he says, lead with questions. So great leaders know how to ask the right questions. So he says, lead with questions, not with answers. Engage in dialogue and debate, which is very important. He says, when mistakes happen, conduct autopsies without blame. So figure out, what went wrong. Don't be scared to, conduct autopsies and figure out, examine the situation. You lost the client, get the feedback. What went wrong? Who did what? Without necessarily wanting to blame. Then he says, build red flag mechanisms to gather critical feedback. Man, this is so good. So this is all under disciplined thought. Remember, we said you need disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. Take disciplined action. This is what this book is all about. So the other thing that he speaks about in the book is this whole idea of the concept called, and this is one of my favorite concepts of all time, the hedgehog concept. The hedgehog concept. And so, and this is the idea behind this. So when they did the research, they discovered that the great companies all understand this hedgehog concept. So these are companies that do what they are exceptionally passionate about. So there are 3 circles here. At the top is what you're passionate about. Then they are companies that know what drives their economic engine. And there are companies that know they operate within the limits of what they know they can be the best at. Okay? So at the top you've got, so here's the thing. So this is how I look at it. You must know what you are deeply passionate about, what drives your economic engine, and what you can be the best at. And where these 3 things intersect is what he calls the hedgehog concept. So when you as the business owner or as the executive or as the leader in your company know that this area, this field is a field that I'm really, really passionate about. It drives my economic engine and it's something I can really, really be good at, then you are on the right path. And that's all about disciplined thought. Then he speaks about, and obviously there's so much of more stuff in all of this, guys, and I can't get into it because I'm trying to make this video as short as possible. But then he speaks about disciplined action, and in disciplined action, he speaks about the culture of discipline. Disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined action, the culture of discipline, and how you in your company need to cultivate the culture of discipline, you know, and there's so much of stuff he speaks about there. Then he speaks about how these companies that are great companies use technology as an accelerator. They use technology as an accelerator. Yeah, so this is a really, really great book. It needs, you know, you need to, I think once a year, all CEOs, all senior executives need to read this book. In fact, once every 6 months even, you need to read the book, you know, study some of these concepts and see how you can, you know, actualize and enact some of the things that he speaks about in this book. My name is Luphumlo Joka. If you are part of the family, thank you so much for giving us all of the feedback. If you're not, if this is your very, very first time, please like the page and leave us a comment and let us know if you read the book, what you enjoyed the most about this book. And yeah, until we meet again.